Okay. So the ratio there is almost 2 to 1. Sorry, we're talking about 18%, something like that.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I know most investments funds are looking at 20 to 25% in terms of security. So we're a bit below that at the moment, but I know we're a local authority.
I think in previous years we probably would have invested more longer term, and actually, but there isn't a market out there at the moment. So the benefit for putting something out for 2 years is just not there.
Okay. So moving forward, going back onto the previous around capital investment, there is still a look-see being done, if you like, a business case in terms of what could we do in terms of investing something in a secure way to get a better return, and that could be around housing, similar to, and Debbie, you know all about this, South Norfolk, and it's always get the term wrong. Blue sky, big sky. Big sky. I just say blue sky because I know it annoys John. I'm just actually out of interest. We're Broadland sovereign authority, but what is your ratio there in terms of your investment you're receiving on property?
We are receiving back, Rodney, just remind me, about 1.5 million a year, aren't we, in terms of interest on the loans to the big sky companies there. And in terms of our balance sheet, it's about a third that is invested in South Norfolk in its big sky companies there. So it's got about a third in assets, a third in big sky, and a third in cash. But obviously that's been built up over a number of years, and some of the properties have been retained. There's about under 30 properties that the companies own as well, and which they rent out at market rates.
Exactly. Okay. And did you say, and that's 30, you say, do we?
It's high 20s. I can't remember the exact number, but I think it's over 25, but under 30. I just can't remember the exact number.
Okie dokie. All right, Trudy, I know you've been waiting.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to clarify a bit on the liquidity. If you look at paragraph 20 on page 70, written in the actual strategy, it says there should be liquid short-term deposits of at least 4 million with a week's notice. Right. So it does mention that in the strategy. That's a minimum of 4 million.
Yeah.
And the other thing I just wanted to clarify, because I know we had the discussions last year, albeit on Zoom. We did say that we would not invest in either the Emirates or Hong Kong, and I've added to the list this year. I've added Qatar to the list that although they are on the list that we could invest in, I've put them on the list that we can't.
Yes, that's on the ethical aspect of it. Caroline had raised that full council as well. So yeah, just back on the investments. I'll park that at the moment, just in case there's a little bit of a funnel going on here, Trudy. Did you want to say anything on that? Because I know you had raised this before. Carol, are you happy?
I'm just happy that you've done that. So thank you, Trudy.
Okay. Yes. So just going back on the on the returns, Debbie, because it's a question I actually want to ask Trudy and Rodney. Sorry about this, Jamie's. Yeah. So in terms of income from the housing and from interest, etc., that the company is returning to the council, you may not be able to get the exact figure now. It's just a average. It's just a approximate, if you like. what would be the percentage of your revenue, if you like, income revenue, as opposed to what our return is on our investments?
So a loan to a commercial organisation like Big Sky would probably be in the region of about 4 to 6%.
Yeah.
Whereas at the moment, if you invest on the money markets, you're getting sub 1%.
Sub one.
So there is a significant margin there, but that obviously does depend on finding a company to invest in. And as I say, we mentioned Broadland Growth is looking at opportunities, and indeed it could be a business case there if the right opportunity came up to invest some of the council's money that way. But you do need the right opportunity.
Okay. So Broadland Growth could get a return on building projects, housing, etc.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
I think.
So could I ask then, Debbie, Trudy, and Rodney, is that being looked at the moment in terms of a plan, possibly?
Well, absolutely. I think I don't want to talk for Trudy. I'm sure Trudy say that is the ambition. Is that we invest and we do earn a return on interest of around the magnitude that Rodney's talked about, 4 to 6%, depending on what the development is. But obviously, it's finding the right development that allows you to do that. And I think that the difference between the two councils was Big Sky initially had 2 plots of land that it could test its toe in the water, so it wasn't taking an initial risk because it had the land there. And then once it established itself, it then went and bought a significant piece of land near the Norwich Research Park in Cringleford to deliver a big development. So I think it's had a different start up in life, if you see what I mean, to Broadland Growth, because there was some land that was already there, but South Norfolk has exhausted its own land supply in terms of doing that. Unfortunately, we don't have land that we can do the same with at Broadland, so it is finding a plot of land that stacks up with a business case and is a viable proposition.
Trudy?
Yeah, just to say, obviously, in the past, we have delivered Carabreck and we have delivered the houses at Plumstead. But as Debbie said, we haven't actually got any land. But like I said earlier in the meeting, the leader was at a Broadland Growth meeting last week. So he's as frustrated as anyone that we're trying to find a project to deliver. But the ones we have delivered have been successful because not only have you got the housing, but you've also got the interest that is paid to the council by Broadland Growth as an income as well.
Yeah.
So for every reason, that's why we've kept sort of topping Broadland Growth's reserves up so that it's ready to just go as soon as we can find the right thing.
Right. Sue and then Caroline.
Thank you, Chair. There was a piece of land that Broadland owned just up the road near the Broadland Business Park. Do we not still own that?
Are you talking about the piece that is being developed? There's two developers delivering some housing at the moment, and we've got a piece. Are you talking about that? There is a small piece of land, but it's not huge, but there is a small piece of land, and I think that is being looked at Broadland Growth. I haven't been to a Broadland Growth. I'm going to the next Broadland Growth meeting as it happens, but I haven't been one up until now, so I'm not privy to their conversation, if you like.
Caroline?
Is it feasible to look at some of the big developments that are coming up? And I'm thinking about Marriott Park, for example, which are coming in phases, and we could probably take one phase of that.
Yeah, I believe the leader is looking at the Beeston Park that's possibly coming forward as whether we go in early on that one even. So yes, they are. Everything is looked at, definitely.
It's land value as well, which is Debbie said, it's part of the issue, isn't it? Okie dokie. Great, because as we all know, getting this better return, where we're going in terms of the future, the previous debate as well, Rodney and Trudy, in terms of income, and secure some, obviously there's a lower percentage because you've got to protect your revenue, 4 to 6% and provide hours at the same time is obviously an ambition, Okie dokie. So are we happy to move to the recommendation? Okey-doke. And again, if we could have a good minute on that for overview scrutiny, that's great. So the recommendation is 1, 2, 3. Are you happy as written? Yeah. Oh yeah, sorry. Bit short there, which I know, but 4, 5, 6, 7. Or do you want me to read them out? No? Fine, okie dokie. So
Page 63.
sorry.
Sorry, shelf page.
Oh, right. Okay. So are we all happy? Yeah. Please show. Yes. Unanimous. Brilliant. Thank you very much. And thank you, Rodney, for all your effort today, substituting. Next item 13, Council Tax Assistance Scheme 2022-23, page 85, Ken and Lindsay Sayer. Hi, Lindsay. Welcome, Lindsay. Have you been to ONS before? I can't remember.
No, I've never.
No, I didn't
attended
think you
before,
had.
so, yeah.
A good
Brand new to
memory
me.
for faces, so
Did you?
welcome.
Thank you very much. Do bear with me. Okay, so I'm here today to present to Overview and Scrutiny the proposed changes to Broadland's Council Tax Assistance Scheme for the financial year 2022-23. Just to give you a little bit of a background to these proposals and how we reached this position. Some of you may know, but just to make sure that everyone's up to speed, pensioner regulations for council tax assistance are prescribed nationally. We don't have any choice over those, but we do have the ability to shape our council tax assistance scheme for those of working age. The scheme that we have at the moment was originally written back in 2013, and as it's required to be reviewed and agreed by council each year, it has been tweaked each year to keep up to date with regulatory changes and any changes to any welfare benefits, such as universal credit will be the one that's most obvious to people. But since its inception, it's not had a proper full-scale review to make sure that it is still fit for purpose for our residents, and that's what we wanted to do this year. So as part of this review, we consulted the benefit team because they're the ones who actually are on the front line. They deal with our residents and our customers. We had a legal consultant look over the scheme to make sure it is still legally compliant with things like equalities legislation, things like that. Luckily it was, so that was fun. And we also had some member workshops as well to make sure that members were involved in the process of what we actually wanted to do. So we wanted to ensure that our scheme was fair, that it was, as I say, fit for purpose, that it was cost effective, and also importantly, that it was simple to understand. And so our customers will actually know what they could possibly be entitled to. As you're probably aware, these things can be quite complicated. So we wanted to sort of take some of that out and make it fairly simple for people to understand. And as part of this, the scheme is being rewritten in simple language as well. So customers should be able to read it and understand what they could be entitled to. So as part of this, we came up with some changes that we wanted to make. They were modelled by a company called Policy and Practice to make sure that it was cost effective. And the cost of this is in Appendix 2. We also had a public consultation on the changes, and that was out for 10 weeks. And as you can see in Appendix 1, all the responses, but the results came out as positive, which was really good. As part of the consultation as well, we consulted the Police and Crime Commissioner's Office. They came back with a positive response. They were approving of the proposed changes. And we also consulted with County Council as well. And while they acknowledged the changes, they didn't actually comment either way on whether it's positive or negative, but they did acknowledge them. So I'll just briefly go through the proposed changes to make sure everything's clear. First proposal, proposal 1, is to remove the family premium for any new council tax assistance claims, and it would still remain for anybody who is currently claiming. This is part of simplifying the scheme, and it would align it with pensioner regs and housing benefit regulations on this issue as well. And this is for a decreasing number of people. And so we thought it was time to take it out to simplify the scheme. We also wanted to increase the non-dependent deductions to £5 for all non-dependents, regardless of their circumstances. Again, this is to simplify the scheme, and it was to ensure that all non-dependent adults in the household are contributing at least a small amount towards the household. Proposal 3 is to increase the maximum council tax assistance to 84%. Currently it's 83%, but we felt a slight increase to 84 would help out all the residents, especially with the cost of living increase that's happening at the moment. And finally, proposal 4 is to address an imbalance that was highlighted through the legal review. It's to introduce earnings disregards for claimants who are in receipt of universal credit. To say currently there's an imbalance because earnings disregards are applied for people who aren't on universal credit, but for those who are, no earnings disregards are applied. So we wanted to address that. And it's this issue that accounts for the small increase in the cost that you can see in Appendix 2. So that actually brings me to the end of that, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Far away, and then Dave.
Thank you. Some councils have a bigger reduction of council tax assistance to help poorer households. I think Great Yarmouth, North Norfolk have 91.5%, and I think it's 100% council tax assistance in Norwich. So how did Broadland arrive at the figure of 84%?
To be perfectly honest, it was just a figure. We wanted to increase it slightly, so we decided to increase it by a percentage figure, because part of the project this year was to not increase the cost of the scheme overall. It was to keep it fairly cost neutral. And because we had to address the imbalance of the earnings disregards, there wasn't a lot of scope to increase the percentage by any significant amount and still keep it, sort of fairly cost neutral. And so we came up with 84%. It is going to be in line with South Norfolk's, and it will be in line with Kings Lynn as well. Kings Lynn and West Norfolk, they're also changing to 84 next year.
Sorry, just make a note. I'll need to funnel through on that, but I'll let Dave come in first.
Thank you very much. Proposal 2, to increase the non-dependent deduction to £5 for non-dependents. Is that £5 per annum, per month, per week?
Okay, sorry, this always highlights the issue that I do with benefits day to day, and I appreciate that it's not always clear for people who aren't dealing with the assessments. It's £5 per week. So it's whatever a customer is entitled to in their council tax assistance. If they have a non-dependent adult in the household, that council tax assistance is reduced by £5, because the expectation is the non-dependent in the household should be contributing towards the overall household expenses as
Right,
well.
but did you just not use the words regardless of circumstance?
It's regardless of their income, yes, regardless. So any non-dependent, whether they're working or they're in receipt of universal credit or job seekers allowance, they would all have £5, be expected to contribute the same.
Right, and I'm just trying to get my head around this and the methodology of imposing it now at possibly the worst possible time of doing something like this.
Okay, well, it was £4 for anybody who was working. That hasn't been increased since 2016, so that's why we thought it was time to increase it to £5. And also we wanted to include it for all non-dependents, because it, as I say, it simplifies the scheme. Everybody knows if you have another adult in the household, it will be the same amount of money, and it prevents rebilling if the non-dependent circumstances keeps changing, which does quite frequently happen. If they start work or stop work, it won't actually require us to reassess the customer's entitlement.
Right.
And so it's just for the sake of simplicity.
Okay.
And we thought that
I've got a personal problem about this, because I'm currently doing some work with a young chap who's 18 years old. He's SEND, and the amount of benefits that he gets per week, what that is, it may sound like only a £1 increase, but it's regardless of circumstances. In his circumstances, this would be I know, psychologically damaging more than it will be financially damaging. And it's complex. It's not exactly a simple thing, but ultimately you're going to be asking him for £52 a week more without it being necessarily logically put down in what's in front of us. And we're not somebody with special learning difficulties. So I would prefer not to see it in there, and I don't like the proposal at all. However, if it is something that is going to be done, can we ensure that it is very well communicated that this is what we're actually doing? Because how it's actually supplied in front of us here, there is, if I'm having trouble understanding what the report says and what's being said, then I know there's going to be people out there that are going to have even more difficulty than that, and don't necessarily have the luxury of sitting down with the officers responsible to actually have that discussion.
Yes, so we do have plans in place to, for any resident who is going to be affected by these changes, we are going to correspond with them before they actually get their annual bill. So they will be aware of the changes that are coming up, and it will be fully explained. And they will, of course, have a number that they can call to discuss it with us. With all of these changes as well, we are aware that there will be some people who will be fairly badly affected, because there are always some people that slip through the net or have circumstances which are more vulnerable than others. To try and mitigate this, every year we do have a pot of money, the discretionary scheme, so it's council tax discretionary relief. And as part of the correspondence to the customers, we will notify them that this pot of money is available. And luckily, that is absolutely down to the officer's discretion, that if they feel that these customers have been put under undue hardship because of these changes, because of their particular circumstances, we can use that pot of money to fill the gap, I suppose.
I do have a second set of questions, if I could, Mr. Chairman.
Just before you do, Dave, I need to funnel on this as well. Going back to 2013, I was in this chamber and we discussed this before. I was also at the full council meeting. There was a proposal to eliminate the Hardship Fund, which is a discretionary fund you just talked about. At that point in time, ONS disagreed. It recommended to full council and cabinet that we do not eliminate it. It went to a full vote at cabinet, at council, and by majority vote, it was agreed to retain that fund. What is the fund a year at the moment? How much is it the total?
At the moment, it's £15,000 in total, and it is actually a legal requirement to have that pot, so we don't have the option of not having it. And that wasn't known in 2013. That was something that sort of came to light.
Oh, so there's proposed in 2013 to eliminate a fund that was a legal requirement.
Basically, yes, but
Really?
I think a lot of councillors weren't necessarily aware.
And the fund
and it
in
was highlighted
2013,
to us,
I'll just say this, was more than 15,000.
Sorry, I wasn't involved in it at the time.
But
so
I
I'm
was,
not
and
sure
it was
how-
actually
yeah.
42,000. So it's more than 15,000. Okay. So the fund actually was more than any legal requirement. But the key point I've got here is, and it's really in line with what Dave's talking about. I'm not quite sure, and this is confusing for us. There is the Hardship Fund. I'm not quite sure when this goes through how it's going to be communicated to people, but it is there. It is limited to apparently this 15,000 figure now. Don't know whether that cover all of it. The cost neutral basis of this, which is what you've talked about, seems to be a drive around the 84%. The reference that's been made, so I'm just pulling the points, the reference that's been made in terms of Norwich at 100%, elsewhere at 91.5%. From what my understanding of it is, they've got some more discretionary money in there to take it to that 91, 95.5, and 100%. So that's been a political decision made by those councils. Excuse me. Still suffering a bit from a chest infection. That's been a political decision. So it looks here, the driver is to keep this cost neutral. So in terms of policy, just trying to discover what the policy direction here is. And this £5 would be a reduction.
Yes, so it would mean that we would be paying out slightly more, but I would like to stress that the amount of non-dependents, and I don't have the exact figure, I am sorry, it's not hundreds of people that we're talking about here. It's just most people have a non-dependent deduction anyway, because most non-dependents are working, but this is just for the few who are on sort of what we would call passported benefits or unemployment benefits. They would suddenly have it. And the reason came out as unemployment benefits are £77 a week at the moment. So it was discussed, to say, with members in the team that £5 out of that £77 as a contribution towards the household wasn't unreasonable. That was the thinking behind it.
So a household where we have, I'm just trying to go through examples so we can all understand what we're talking about. So, sorry. So a household where we have a single person or a couple responsible for the council tax, they're on a basic pension or are in receipt of credits themselves, universal credit. There's then another person in the house who's also on universal credit. How does that play out?
Okay, so if you had somebody in the household who was in receipt of, for sake of simplicity, if they were on universal credit and not working, it's likely they would receive the maximum council tax assistance, which would be 84% next year. So you have your bill at 100%, we pay 84% of that. And from that 84%, whatever charge that would be, we would take £5 off that, and that £5 would be expected to be contributed by this other adult in the household who hasn't been included in any part of the calculation so far. So their income doesn't get taken into account as part of the calculation because they're non-dependent, they're not a liable party, they sort of sit separate to it. But it's always felt that this other adult in the household can't be disregarded completely from the calculation because all adults, the idea is everybody contributes something.
Okay. And final question on this. What is the difference between financially for the council between 84% and 100%? What's the actual financial difference?
I don't honestly know. We haven't modelled on what it would be for 100%, so I apologise.
It's just that if the driver's cost neutral, however, the difference is for the council £5,000 a year, but nobody knows that, including the cabinet, this actually can affect your decision.
Yes, I appreciate that, but we would have to get it remodelled by policy and practice at a cost if we were to do that, yes.
Okay. Who is next? Caroline?
What about families who have who are looking after a disabled person and they only get personal independence payment? That is only about £56 a week. Does it affect them?
So if you are a disabled person and you are in receipt of personal independence payment is it's a non-means tested benefit, and so you can be in receipt of that and still apply for an income benefit, is what we call it. So that would be universal credit or any other sort of income benefit, but it would be universal credit these days. That's where everyone's moved to. So you could be in receipt of PIP and still get your unemployment benefit or non-working benefit in addition to that. It's very unlikely that somebody would just be in receipt of PIP, and if they are, we would help them out to get them to apply for the income benefit that they should be entitled to. So that nobody should just be in receipt of PIP.
Okay, well, I didn't know that, but I will probably get in contact with you then.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's I completely concur with that. That's correct. Who is next after Sue, and then back over to you?
Yeah, can I just clarify then? So basically, there's £4 a week for people who are in employment, and that will increase to £5. But we are now going to include people who are not in employment, who have currently been £0, who will now be £5. Is that right?
Yes, that's exactly right. Yes.
Okay, I personally think that's quite a leap for somebody who's on a universal credit.
Again, I haven't got 360, and Martin's just informed me that Trudy would like to say something. So if you could just hold on a moment, and then Trudy.
Yeah, thank you. Just to say, first of all, I wasn't in the cabinet in 2013, so I didn't take the pot of money. Didn't try to take the pot of money away. And the pot of money has never, up until now, run out. each year. The officers are well aware that if we are going to run out, they can come back. We would not leave any resident not being helped because the pot of money has run out. There has been no need to top it up. That's why it's remained at that amount. And I think the other thing to say is, as Lindsay's trying to explain about the £5, it's not going to be that it will be up the homeowner or whoever the council tax bill is in the name of will get the bill, and it will be up to them if they take the £5 off the dependent or non-dependent or not. It's not like a bill is going to be sent out, as you'd said, to the young lad you're helping. He's not suddenly going to get a bill because the council tax bill isn't in his name. So it's going to be the council tax bill. The owner of the bill will deal with it however they wish to deal with it. And I think going back to the cost neutral part, we can then also look at raising council tax or not raising council tax. The more we provide services that cost us something, we've got to find that money somewhere. So I think that's why the starting point was cost neutral.
Yeah, and think for that about the we've never actually got to that limit, but the commitment has always been, I do remember this actually, that because we clarified it, I think in 2015 again, that you would actually come back to, you're right, George, I remember that now. But just on this point about all the, the homeowner or rentee or whoever's responsible wouldn't have to, ask for this for the other person. Well, yes, but the presumption here is that in terms of payments, well, because that other person is in the house, this will be a burden to perhaps somebody who's on benefits. Therefore, it's expected to take it from them. So that is the premise.
Sorry, I didn't quite understand your point. Could you mind?
What you're saying is this: if the other basically, so person A responsible for paying the council tax, if they don't then ask the other person in the house to make this up, then they are going to have to pay this. And the presumption, the whole basis of this has been on the presumption that, well, they should be contributing something themselves. So now the whole thing is balanced on that basis, because if that person wasn't in the house, the other person, then they wouldn't be paying this other £5. So it is actually directly associated with the other person. It's going to be very difficult for somebody to go, do you know what, I don't want to take it off you when they're on perhaps universal credit.
Yeah, I can fully appreciate that. But unfortunately, that is the nature of the council tax. We can only apply council tax assistance to the person who is the liable party for council tax. And yes, I would appreciate, but this isn't a new thing because anybody who is, as we say, is currently working, any non-dependents who are working, this situation already applies to them. So this would just be, as I say, for those people. And it's something which occurs in housing benefit, for example. So they would be familiar with the concept if they have another adult in the household.
Yeah, so scenario I think that's causing, I'll come on to that. I think the scenario that's causing some concern here at the moment in terms of clarification, and the other point I made about information through for Cabinet as well, is that we're talking about a household where we've got somebody who's universal credit, they're responsible for paying the council tax, you've got somebody else in the household as well who's got some other issues, perhaps one that Dave talked about, universal credit. And now we've got this increase going on, maybe offset by Hardship Fund, but underlining all of it, it's a cost neutral approach at 84%, which is already down on 100% as it is in some other local authorities. So there's already if you live there, you don't pay as much, but if you live over there, you do. So, and that's based on, so I think the issue, and Trudy mentioned it about, well, raising council tax and all the rest of it to pay for these things, is a point, obviously. But this is why I said, what is the difference here? What is the difference between 84 and 100% in terms of cost? Because it actually figures into then what the Cabinet may want to do in reality. the difference is £1,000, we aren't going to put council tax up for that. You don't need to. We can absorb that quite easily, or £2,000 overall. But if we don't know that, we could be making quite a hardship issue here and quite a complicated burden going on with something that's quite simply we can absorb. And that is a political decision. So, Dave.
Thank you very much. I am right. I've got the government website in front of me, and the amount of the monthly standard allowance of universal credit for an under 25-year-old is £257.33 per month. So under the current system, that person will not have to contribute anything. But under the system that's being proposed, the contribution will be between will be £20 a month, or £25 a month. It's a 5-week month. So worst case scenario, that's actually 10% of that person's allowance going on a scheme, which is a lot of money. I certainly couldn't afford a 10% drop in my income very, very easily. And as I said, I have a working knowledge of people in this situation. So I would really like to ask the officers to re-examine this proposal, because I really, really think it is going to be more detrimental than a cost saving to at least certain individuals. And yes, admittedly, we do need to try to keep everything as cost neutral as possible. But when we are talking about vulnerable people, if that help is not there, or we're taking something away from somebody that is vulnerable without that gap being filled up from elsewhere, that's where I'm sitting here as an elected member, having a really, really bad moral objection. Even if for me, £25 is nothing. I spend that in 2 days on cigarettes. But to somebody in like the young gentleman I mentioned earlier, in his position, that would be heartbreaking.
Yeah, I fully understand your position. Well, the way we came to it is we didn't want to assume, obviously, that every person is vulnerable. Some people are in receipt of universal credit and are looking for a job, and they will probably find one soon. And as I say, that was the situation that we didn't want to continually to rebuild. And it was also to encourage young people to start contributing towards the household as well, and not just make an assumption that they didn't have to pay anything. However, as I say, I fully appreciate your position that there will be some young people in this situation who are vulnerable, who won't necessarily get a job quickly, or have certain situations that haven't been taken into account in this proposal. And that is where the Hardship Fund comes in, to try and mitigate that. We can't use the Hardship Fund, as you say, because the amount of money for all these non-dependents who are suddenly going to get a charge, that's not the idea at all. But it is there for those customers who are going to fall under hardship, who are vulnerable, and then we can use our discretion to fill that gap.
And have to ask for it and know about it, which we clarified before. Mike.
Thank you, Chairman. And just one of the principles of council tax in this scheme, and I think it's important, as Councillor Mancini-Boy alluded to, this isn't money that we're billing people. This is just money that they don't have to pay. So the end user doesn't actually see the fact that, how this bill is worked out. So they just get a bill at the end of the year. But I guess it is something around, is council tax assistance and this type of benefit about encouraging people to work if they can. And I think it's for that household to make that decision about whether or not, how much they charge that young person or anyone else in the house. And I think there's something there about not penalising individual people, but looking at overall household and how much they want to contribute. Yes, of course, we could take that to 100%, and that would cost us more money. And you're absolutely right, we haven't modelled that, but we're in a position where we need to balance the cost of the council, the income we have, compared to how much we charge vulnerable residents, and that is a balance.
So got Sue, Caroline, and then, sorry, your first name, I keep forgetting it. Sorry?
Eleanor.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Eleanor.
Yeah.
I do apologise.
Thank you, Chair. I think we've got a policy which is falling at completely the wrong time for the young people that are most affected by this. And that's not least because of the pandemic. I think the last couple of years has had such a huge impact on young people's studies for their sixth forms, for their university and college plans, having to drop out of courses because they haven't been able to go enough, and all these various things have just happened because of the pandemic over the last couple of years. I would propose we defer this policy for at least another year to give those young people a chance to actually have or establish what they're going to do with their lives. I saw a statistic yesterday, 40% dropouts from universities and colleges. This is an unusual, unprecedented situation, and I really think this policy is coming at the wrong time. So could we please have I'd like to propose a deferral of it. Thank you.
Okay, Caroline.
I just wanted to ask the officers if you could make sure that the help is advertised. So, I mean, people with families who have children with disabilities, they have enough to cope with in their lives. They don't have the time to find out all the information they can get. So if we can put this in the Broadland news, we can put it on social media, that this help is available to residents, I'll be very grateful.
Sorry, yes, we do plan on contacting them directly if it's going to affect them. So they will be sent a letter and advising them of any help that they can get. So yeah, they will be fully aware of anything in addition.
Eleanor.
Thank you. I'm concerned about the removal of the family premium from households. I gather the estimated figure of the households that will be affected by this will be about 25. They'll be the new claimants, but and the amount we're talking about, it looks to me, is about 25p difference a week, which would be about £13 a year. So I'd like to suggest that the council could well absorb that cost and therefore not take away the family premium from those households. And just one other point, from I gather that legacy benefits will eventually be phased out completely. So at some point, everyone will be on universal credit. I don't know whether you know when, and in which case, again, I'd like to suggest that the council could absorb the cost until such a time as everyone is on universal credit.
So just to clarify the numbers there, it will actually make a difference of £3.52 a week. So when you extrapolate that up, it is slightly more, but yes, it's still not a huge amount. The number of 25 claimants was an estimation based on the number of claims for this previous financial year that it would have affected. So we sort of moved that and reduced it slightly for next year, because obviously these numbers are going to go down each year, as you say, as more and more people go on to universal credit. No, we don't know when everyone's going to be moving on to universal credit. According to the government, it should have happened by now, but obviously that's still not the case. So so this wasn't really based on cost, this one. This was to do with simplifying the scheme. And as I was saying before, we wanted to take things out of the scheme, which were making it more complicated for people to understand. It's another thing that's just an if and a but to it. This aligns it with the pensioner regulations, and it aligns it with the housing benefit regulations as well, because they are assessed in tandem when the officer does it and when we notify the customer. So it's something that would make the schemes the same. And that's why we chose to remove it from there. So yeah, that's why it was removed. It wasn't necessarily based on cost. I'd also like to highlight as well that in our scheme, any child maintenance payments that a customer would get, they are fully disregarded. So for not all of people, this isn't going to affect all people so harshly. Some people will have an income that we're simply not taking into account because they have child maintenance payments, as I say, that we don't count in the calculation. And again, I know it sounds like I'm repeating myself, but we do have the council tax discretionary relief to make sure that no family gets put into hardship. And that's one thing I can proudly say, that we always make sure that if we're aware of anybody who does come into hardship, we find a way to help them through this fund. And as Trudy points out, we have managed to make that budget work in previous years, but we are aware, should need be, we can ask for more, because we didn't want to assume that everybody is going to need the hardship fund. That's not the case. Some people will be able to manage on the council tax assistance that they get, but their discretionary relief is there should people actually be in hardship.
Anyone else? Trudy?
Yeah, sorry, can I just come back in as well? I think when you're comparing the 84% to 90 whatever somewhere else and 100% at City, you're not necessarily comparing everything because you don't know all the other limitations within their policy. You're just looking at one part of their policy. How do you know what all the other bits are? So you're actually comparing apples and pears there, because they might not have the disregards that you don't know what they've got in the rest of their policy.
Very true. I'm going to move to the recommendation. I know there's proposed, I haven't heard a seconder yet, but that gets deferred. I don't know if, Dave, you want to propose anything. I'm on the edge of proposing something, but before we get there, and it may affect actually what we propose as well, we can do this as an ONS, independent of cabinet anyway. We could ask for you to supply us, and not an email, but pop it back through to a meeting, for the difference on cost neutrality between this 84 and say 100%. And we can do that. We can ask for that. Not at this meeting, because you can't do it at this meeting. I understand that. So could you provide that, please?
Yeah, Chairman. Obviously we can get that booked in and get that provided for. Yes.
So just to clarify, that was the cost of if it was based on 100%, is that right? Okay.
Yeah, just so you got the 2, 8, it could be 90, whatever, but otherwise you'd be all over the place, wouldn't you? You know? Just out of interest, actually, because if there's not much in that, then, you know.
I think, I mean, I don't have the exact numbers, but it is certainly not inconsequential if you think of the cost of the scheme in total. If you look at Appendix 2, it's sort of 6.5 million, and that's based on 85%. You can sort of take the assumption that it is.
But again, just in terms of, so we know what it is we are talking about, having that, because when you say cost neutral, and then this point that Peter raised about council tax, then being raised and all the rest of it, is that real? And of course, ONS doesn't know.
Yeah,
you just don't know at the moment. To make any kind of view be known for the council or flag something up for the cabinet. That's all true.
Yeah, can I just add, if you do that, obviously we've got to talk to county and the Police and Crime Commissioner, because they lose their part of the funding as well. They lose that because we're the collecting authority. As Lindsay said, we already consulted with them putting it up to 84%, which they've agreed to. We put it up to 100. Their element of the council tax collection, they wouldn't receive either.
So their element then is governed by us, not by them.
If we do that, although we have to consult with them, as Lindsay said, the Police and Crime Commissioner were fine. County didn't reply either which way.
Yeah.
But they would lose their element of collection of council tax as well. That's what you have to bear in mind.
I'm not surprised that County didn't reply. No,
well, they acknowledged though.
They acknowledged because to them it's neither here nor there, I believe.
Yeah.
But Rodney.
I was just trying to put some rough and ready numbers on this. So if the cost of the council tax scheme is about £6.5–7 million, and that's 84%, it'd probably be about another £1 million cost of that council tax support scheme to take that up to 100%.
The direct cost to the council.
So that'd be £1 million to the taxpayers in Norfolk. We would only obviously have a share of that, our 10% share. So we'll probably be looking at £120,000 extra cost to this council. But as Trudy mentioned, the big cost would fall on Norfolk County Council, and they would probably have a £750,000 extra cost because of this increasing that benefit.
Okay, as they do over at the city.
Small sums. We're talking about a significant sum that would affect our budgets.
As they do in the city.
As they do in the city, yes.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
They do have a higher council tax rate than we do.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about them. They haven't actually answered this, so I wouldn't expect them to. Being a county councillor, I sort of understand. I think Tony does as well. Or Tony's still there, but just us. Let's just talk about us. So you believe that possibly to us it would be 100 to 120,000?
That would be my rough back of the fag packet calculation, but I think we will come back with a more accurate figure. But we're not talking about £2,000–3,000.
Yeah, really helpful, because now you can assess what's going on in terms of policy, its balance. So it's really, really helpful. Right.
Sorry, Chair.
Okie dokie. So move to
Could I just
Sorry, Sue.
clarify? Sorry, Rodney. Were you talking about proposal 2 or all of the proposals, or where does that 120 come from?
I was proposing based on the moving it from 84 to 100%, which is what the chair had indicated.
We asked what the cost difference was. The point had been raised by Eleanor earlier on about, you know, one council's 92%, another council's 100% the city, and we're at 84%. So we're trying to find out what the difference is between the two in terms of cost to this council. So if it was a few £1,000, well, you know, we could absorb that. It's not going to hit the council tax in terms of rise. So therefore, let's be sensible about it. However, we've just quantified it. This comes back to the original point Eleanor was making, which we've cleared now, a good scrutiny point, which we're cleared now. In actual fact, we're talking about 100 to 120,000. So about 40% of a council tax rise, if you like. So now we know that. We can really sort of eliminate that. But now we come back down to 84%, okay? Because otherwise it means moving that forward in terms of revenue collection. We're back down now to this £5, which is the original issue. Dave had an issue with, myself, Sue, etc. So I know. Should I put our members happy? Because I know there's been. I've not heard anybody actually say they're supporting this at the moment. So I'm trying to reflect and summarise as the chair. Is there anybody who wants to make a counter proposal, or should we put this to the vote as recommended and see whether there's a majority for that or not? Well, there's been no seconder. I did mention it, so I asked. Well, I can't, because I did say there's been a proposal to. So I did ask. So I'd need a seconder for that, and I reminded, and I've not got one. So. Yes, we could put that. We could test this. We could test also. Put that recommendation. I was going to propose another recommendation, but I've now had a big part of that answered for me, actually. So I'm not going to do that. So the recommendation as it stands, and the key point about the £5, this is the key issue. I'll put that to the vote. If that's carried, it's carried. If it's not carried, then we can come back to then another proposal or amendment. So I'll put the recommendation as it is. All those in favour?
1,
2, 3,
2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in favour.
Was that including Martin?
Yes.
Okay, all those against?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it's 7.
Right, okay.
So that's lost.
Okie dokie. Right, so we could frame a alternative proposal then, and ask the cabinet to consider not implementing the £5. I think that's where what members were. I don't know if you want to define this at all, Dave, because you had quite a point about it.
Thank you very much. I just think it needs to be looked at more carefully. I think there's in principle, when you read it in front of you, it does make sense. When you actually drill down, there's some factors which haven't been taken into account, and I really do think it needs to be recosted to some extent and then represented. Obviously, as it is, if those issues that I have can be resolved, then I'm sure that they can be resolved before Cabinet meets next week. But the issue for me is that vulnerability of at least one particular group, obviously the one that I highlighted, doesn't look like it's really been taken into account at this time from what's been explained. But I think it is something that with a small short review, it is something that can be implemented as long as those safeguards are actually in place. But the safeguards that have been highlighted, I don't think really changes the fact of the example that I gave earlier. And if that's one example, are there any others out there that we don't know about at this point in time?
Sue, do you want to?
Yeah, my concern is just about those people who will suddenly get a £5 a week increase, and I do think that is an issue, and that's my real sole reason for opposing this. If they can find some way of having a sliding scale or a gradual increase, but I think to be given £5 a week is a lot of money for some families.
Okay. Right. Trudy, and then I'll come back to you, Sue.
Yeah, I just want to come in on something Councillor King said. I appreciate his opinion, but I take exception that this wasn't looked at carefully, because we have had members, 2 of which are in the room now, along with myself, probably working on this on a regular basis with officers for about 9 months. So I take exception that that hasn't been looked at carefully. It hasn't been on a whim, I can assure you. We've had regular meetings with members and from South Norfolk as well. And the chairman of Wellbeing has been on, Fran has been on every single meeting as well. So it has not been done lightly at all. So I just take exception on saying it hasn't been looked at carefully, because things always are, I can assure you.
Can I? Yeah, thank you. So I didn't mean any disrespect, but obviously my point is, I've come up with one example of somebody that suffers. If there's one example, there may well be others, and obviously it's not something that would necessarily be looked at, because that example is something that, unless you've actually dealt with something similar, it won't come up. And as I said, this is just one example, and I said that, by the sound of it, hasn't actually been looked at, and it's understandable that actually could be the case. However, as I said, couple of just a small investigation, I'll actually be quite happy to support it. But I just want that one example made sure that is actually looked at. And if I got the answers to the points I made earlier, I would have voted in favour of this. But I didn't get those reassurances or the answers that I would have liked to hear, which is why I voted against it.
As I said, I perfectly appreciate how you want to vote. That's not my comment. My comment is we have spent a lot of time. It's not been a knee jerk. And I would also say that Lindsay and her team will have come up across against so many examples, because they're the one administering it. So yes, I appreciate we won't necessarily come up with every single possible, because you can't. But the officers are working on this all day, every day. So they do come up with these examples, and there are ways to help anybody that needs help. That's all I would say to you.
Yes, and officers do look at things depth, and sometimes, Trudy, we have officers in on the portfolio holders sign off before it goes to cabinet. Then when we get to cabinet, you change your mind. So you've changed your mind through whatever reason. So this is what overview and scrutiny is about. It may well be that we've just spotted something that actually just wasn't. That's the whole point about it. So I think that's the point that Dave's made. I'm not saying that people have been negligent at all. Don't that's not the implication here at all. I think the example is somebody on universal credit, somebody else on universal credit in the house, and they're going to have to pay £5 more, £25 a week. How much is that going to cost us? Is that reasonable or not? I think that's really the scrutiny on that.
I've got no issue with that. I just don't like being told it hasn't been carefully looked at, because it has.
Yeah. Okie dokie. Right, I'm going to. Caroline, is there anything?
I just think it would have been helpful to have some examples of how you've helped people in a vulnerable position. And I think that would have swayed my mind.
Well, Caroline, we're not in that position here, because it's obviously we can't go through it at the moment. I think the premise here is we should cover a catch-all on this, and I'll come back to you in a second too, because we do need to move on. But I will give you courtesy, come back to you in a moment. Is that I think we've come down to that example of somebody on universal credit, vulnerable situation, somebody else in the house on it as well. Is this £5 increase essentially reasonable? £25 a month. And is that reasonable or not? Could Broadland afford to cover that? Looks like tiny figures to me, Rodney. Really tiny figures, certainly nowhere near 100,000. Is that reasonable? I think that's it. So on that basis, I'll pop that in as the proposal that on the £5, could Cabinet please review that in terms of situation where we've got the situation of somebody responsible on universal credit for the council tax, somebody else living there with council tax, and could they please just have another look at that in terms of offsetting that position? Is it reasonable? How much would it cost us? And ask them to at least have a look at that aspect. Yeah. So all those in favour?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
All those against?
1, 2, 3, 4. Sure on the wording of the proposal.
Well, the proposal is we're asking the Cabinet. So we're asking the Cabinet to consider is the £5 increase in a circumstance where we have responsible council taxpayers on universal credit plus somebody else in the house on universal credit, is that reasonable to charge, as it is felt that the costs of that are actually well encompassed within the council's budgets because there's small numbers, and to reasonably have a look at that. May well be the Cabinet go, we're perfectly happy, whatever, but that's what we're asking. Lindsay.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify the question so I can make sure I come up with the answer that is going to help people make the decision. Councillor King said about vulnerable people, and then that led on to people who are on universal credit. Not everyone on universal credit is considered vulnerable.
We know that, Lindsay.
No, that's fine. So I just want to clarify that.
We've moved that, Lindsay.
Fine.
I'll just clarify for you. We've now moved to universal credit. We've made a distinction here.
And it's anybody who's unemployed. Is that what we're, not just people on universal credit, anyone who's unemployed and then has a non-dependent who is unemployed as well? Yes. Okay.
It's that principle. The number we're talking about, you expect 25, was it 25?
That was for the family premium.
Family premium, sorry. But the number's probably small.
Yes.
We don't know because we haven't got the figures. It's not 100, 120,000. We've ruled that one out, completely reasonable. We'd end up having to put the council tax up for revenue. Could we absorb it? And that's just a reasonable thing to ask and flag up, you know. Okay, Sue.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to request that we add into that a special look at the under 21s. I really think that they have had a raw deal and that this will probably be particularly difficult for the carers or parents to administer anyway with them. So if there's any way of putting an age on that other than 18, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, we can certainly look at that.
Yeah, we've just had a vote, but hang on a minute. So,
the way that universal is done is that the single element for an under 25 is the benchmark that I was looking at, which is 257.33 a month. So I would say that the age, if we are going to look at a specific age, we should look at the banding of what universal credit does. So we have that banding all looked at, which is under the age of 20, single and under the age of 25.
Yeah, and when we say, so just to clarify this, because I think it's covered, Sue, actually, is that when we're saying universal credit, there is the banding. So obviously you have to apply the banding, that methodology, correct? Okay, so it's covered really. And sometimes, you know, over scrutiny, we spend more time on that or this, we spend a lot of time on that. But I think for the public as well, it's important to see that we've done this, and for Cabinet as well, you know, in terms of giving it proper due attention. So we've cleared that one. Do people want a 5-minute break before we move on? We've still got some more. We've still got quite a few items here. Yeah, okie dokie. Right. with us anymore. Oh, I'll still mention the page numbers anyway. Right, item 14, delivery plan, 2022, 2024, page number 96. And Sinead, welcome.
Lovely. Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of the report in front of you today is to set out the proposed delivery plan, and this covers the period of 2022 to 2024, and this is for Cabinet's recommendation to Council to adopt that plan. So just to give a bit of background, Broadland, in collaboration with South Norfolk Council, in March 2020, agreed to our 4-year strategic plan. And that strategic plan covers the period of 2020 to 2024. And that plan sets out our 4 strategic priority areas and also our key objectives that all of our activities should be aligned to over that 4-year period. The draft delivery plan, which is set out in the appendix, which is on page 100, the delivery plan, the key purpose of this is to set out the key activities that we plan on to delivering over the coming 2-year period. And it's really there to enable us to set out how we're going to achieve those priorities and activities we've outlined in our 4-year strategic plan. This year, for the first time, we have developed a plan which covers a 2-year period, which brings us to 2024, and that is the end of the strategic planning period. Set out in more detail within the delivery plan, section 3 of the report just provides an outline of what those key sections are within that plan. So the delivery plan covers the projects and programs of work that we plan on delivering over the coming 2-year period, and it also provides a link back to that strategic plan in terms of how we plan on delivering those priorities. It also, the main bulk of the delivery plan is all the business as usual activities, and this is broken down by service area. So it provides the members and our customers with an overview of all of the key priorities that our service areas will focus on over the coming 2 years. We also have a section within the delivery plan which sets out our delivery measures, which are essentially our performance measures for the coming 2 years. These are our strategic measures. So these are the ones that get reported into Cabinet in quarters 2 and quarters 4. And essentially these are there to set out how we can show how we are performing as a council and how we are delivering against our delivery plan. The plan itself is an agile document, so we aim to update this plan every 6 months, really to show any significant progress in terms of the activities and projects that we're delivering, any significant change, so whether that be in scope of what we plan on to deliver or the timelines that we're delivering to, and also any change in priority. So if adopted by Council, this plan will come into effect in April 2022. And just to move to the recommendation, that is for Cabinet to recommend the adoption of the plan to Council. I will pause there as I know there is a lot of detail within the report. Members have had access to the delivery plan in its draft format for a little while now. And we do have some members of our senior management team here in case there are any specific questions on their service areas. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anything in the report that you'd like to clarify or? Sue?
Thank you, Chair. I still have one concern, and that is that we have growing our economy as our first priority. I would like to see that go down the list a little, and supporting individuals and empowering communities come to the top. Thank you.
Which page you talked about, sir?
Chair, perhaps I
Debbie,
can.
thank you.
The order that is purely presentational, it doesn't denote that one priority has any higher ranking than the others. They're all the same ranking. Certainly, we've never said anything about ranking, so it literally is that it's just the first one that appears in the sort of the table of all the projects and BAU.
If I can just come back, I'd just like to say that isn't the first time I've made that comment over the last 3 years, and I will continue to do so. Thanks.
Okay, just one for me. GE3, page 111. car park and electrical vehicle charging points, work with Norfolk Parking, partnerships develop and implement car parking strategy for Broadland and South Norfolk, including provision of electric vehicle charging points. There's actually two things you're saying in there, isn't there? There's a parking partnership and a strategy, which could have all kinds of implications, but linked to that is the possibility of electrical vehicle charging points. It's just, there's two sort of issues going on there, Phil.
Yeah, and I think in the delivery plan they are in the same box, but I do not think that they need to be completely reliant upon each other. You could put in electric vehicle charging points into some of our car parks without having to wait for an entire strategy. And actually that may well be what happens in reality, Chair. But I do think there is also there is a benefit in, and I've said it for for a while now, I still think there is a benefit in reviewing our strategy. Should we be charging for our car parks? Should we be looking at greater car park enforcement? That is a key issue you'll know very well, of interest to some towns. But I agree with you. I don't think they need to be interdependent upon each other.
Okie dokie. So just as we're going on this, could I make that as a proposal to go forward as something for the cabinet to consider, that those two do not need to be interdependent, and that you could actually go down the road. Sorry for the pun here.
Chair, could I just for ease, rather than the word including, you could have, so in GE3, third line down, strategy for Broadland South Norfolk, including the provision of it. You could simply have and/or the provision of electric vehicle charging points.
Yeah.
Rather than creating a whole new one, you can simply say, by the words and/or, rather than including it, creates that definition between the two.
Okay. So we therefore would need a minute that says that the proposal is that the committee view that these are not interdependent, and therefore recommending that paragraph gets changed to and/or. Could word it in that way. Yeah. And then at the cabinet, Phil, could you also come in on that point from ONS?
Yep, happy to. I'm looking at James. He may have to give me a little kick.
Okie dokie. And just make reference to and could we agree that? Yeah. Okay. You, Martin. Yeah. Go unanimous. Yeah. And just one quick one, Phil, because time is pressing. Where are we looking at the car parking issue of charging and all the rest of it?
In terms of that strategic approach to charging, not charging, enforcing, etc., very early days. Nothing.
Parking. Yeah.
It's still on the horizon.
Okay.
I think electric vehicle charging points may come sooner.
Yeah. Okie dokie. And in line with that, the town council is particularly this particular concern to. Will there be consultation with those town councils? I know that Alsham's got as you know, has hired a consultant around the whole issue of transport and parking at the moment, which may be helpful, may not be helpful. Don't know. I know I've given some feedback to the consultant, which wasn't the feedback he was expecting, but anyway. Right. Okay. Anyone else? Sue, and then Dave.
Yeah, under G7, the housing development strategy, to maximise the delivery of new affordable homes. I don't know if I'm missing something, but we do have separate ways of doing that, do we not? Are we not?
Sorry, where are we, Sue?
G7 on page 112.
G7, yeah.
As I understood it, we have different ways of acquiring or developing affordable housing and property. And I just wondered whether that makes it look as though both are the same. Maybe I may be just misreading it.
No, so this is predominantly with reference to the housing team that sits within economic growth. It's looking at the use of Section 106 monies that has arisen from development that can be then spent on the provision of additional affordable housing. So we secure affordable housing in lots of different ways. You generally get it as part of a development as it comes forward. Something like temporary housing, we will do through Jamie and Mike's team. This is predominantly a strategy around what do we do with some of that Section 106 money when it comes into our coffers, and how do we best use that to maximise the delivery of additional affordable housing over and above what is already being delivered. To be fair to you, Councillor Holland, then it is more of an issue in South Norfolk, where actually they have a greater sum of affordable housing Section 106 money than Broadland does. But it's still making sure there's a clear strategy for how that is best used.
Okay, so the monies are separate, but the strategy may well be the same.
Absolutely, and is dealt with by the same team.
Eleanor, did you indicate? Oh, sorry, seeing things now. Okay, we all, anybody else or no? Okay, so David. Oh, David. Sorry.
Sorry, thank you very much. One of the things I would just like to say is that, as some of you are aware, my business, my office is based in the city, and Norwich City Council is an absolute nightmare to try to get hold of. 10 o'clock in the morning is when the phone lines tend to be open, and they always close them down at 4:30, which during COVID was an absolute nightmare because who is necessarily available during those hours? The Help Hub operating 7 days a week until 10 p.m. I know of several residents that have made real use of that, and it actually has been one of the best things that this council has actually done during COVID to support our communities. And it is noted that that I get particular mentions about how great that service has actually been. So I would like to congratulate the officers on the Help Hub's operation. And one of the other principal achievements that I would like to just go on record with is that being the first councils to distribute £1 million of businesses forced to close. My business, I got my grant, which was not for the full amount because of various different reasons and the Norwich City Council's policies. I got my payout on the 1st of July, which compared to how quickly Broadland had, which I believe it was something along the lines of 87% of payments were actually done in the first 2 weeks, is a real achievement. And it just shows that when we are up to the brink, Broadland has always been very good at putting our residents first, and that is something that I would highly commend all the officers that are responsible for actually making sure that all happened as quickly as possible. Because again, we had the worst thing ever happened financially to this country, or at least since the dark ages, and we were at the front of that. And my congratulations to all those involved. When it comes to the business plan, there are for me a couple of things that we can't really get from a few lines on a piece of paper, but I'm really happy with the generality of what we're actually doing to move forward. I think business development is going to be a big issue for the next couple of years. If we are in a position where Norwich City has an empty city centre, there are going to be businesses that are going to look to set up, and Broadland and South Norfolk are in a very good location for that to be a really positive choice. And looking back on the last 2 years, if there is going to be any investment, I would strongly urge anybody that wants to open up a business in Norfolk to avoid Norwich City Council like the plague, because it has been truly terrible to support businesses, to support their residents, and ultimately deliver the services and the money that the government put to the district councils. And we did an exceptional job, and my congratulations to all the officers involved on that. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much. And noted, and thank you.
I think also a public meeting, we do have to just keep some propriety about what we are saying about other authorities. Dave, you know, I think you're one of the best committee members we've ever had here, but I would say we do need to keep some propriety about that. It's a public meeting.
I've said it to the press, and I've said it publicly before.
And there are, I know you have, Dave, but there are members watching, and of course the minutes need to be written, you know, sensitively around that. Yeah. But I understand the point, Dave. When I had my business South Norfolk, I had very similar issues when I was employing up to 50 people. Okie dokie. Anyone else? Yeah. So we'll recommend this with the amendment.
Subject to the amendment.
Oh, Sue, one, two.
There was just one more, the review and alignment of constitutions at MT 15,
Now I was just looking for this. Where is it?
page 120.
Right. Why is it going punch drunk here? Right. Yes. What is it? What is your point here, Sue?
Well, I'm not quite sure why we are having to review and align these constitutions, and it's popped up once before, and then we were assured that there was something very minor. It just puzzles me slightly as to why we need to have these constitutions in complete alignment, and what difference it would make.
Can I just come in?
Yes.
Yeah. That has been in the plan for quite a while. It's a long-term ambition, really, but I think the Constitution hasn't been looked at in detail for quite some time. I'm just looking at things at piecemeal at the moment. So although it wouldn't be a complete alignment because you've got sovereign councils, but it's certain things where I think we might have updated the Constitution, but then not done some cross-referencing. So you've got some conflicts in there. So there are certain things that really need to be reviewed. It's just been something, it's a big ongoing piece of work that we've got. We bring it piecemeal sometimes, but we do need to look at the Constitution to make it clearer.
Okay, I think it's just that every time it comes up, I ask the same question, basically. So.
It is a it's a long-term piece of work, but it is needed.
So, and what we're not talking about here is as you would be doing in a merger, which we clarified during the feasibility study. I think Sinead might have been at one of those meetings, actually. We're not looking at complete alignment of both constitutions.
No, you'll have to have two separate constitutions because we're two sovereign councils. Some things will be similar, but then some constitutions within all councils are similar because you've got to comply with the law.
Yeah.
But it's just to make things clearer. So when people read them, they're more understandable about the decisions.
The other point I want to make is I've noted that there has been some amendments to the Constitution since 2019, several times. I think there's been some deletion, which I don't think I actually saw at the full council. So I just think we've had this point before. Sue's mentioned this before. That if we're going to change things, can we have what is and then what the change is? And I think there's one that went through council where the what is wasn't there, and it's caused some confusion. Actually, I know I was looking at the Constitution quite recently about a bit. I was just really in here, and I've looked, and it's like that's gone back to the minutes, and I can't actually see that in the council meeting in terms of that it was. Now this is what's being replaced. It's easy for people to miss it, you see.
Yeah, we can have a look, and certainly there's been some things might have been in there that should have come out, and that was a long time ago, and that something's been amended because it's been cross-referenced. The second part of it hadn't come out, but there has been. That has gone to council.
Okay. Well, not a recommendation to cabinet because we don't need to. But could we just emphasise that, from this point of view, that when the Constitution, when proposals are made to amend it, that we're also able to see what the change is, because then we just understand it completely. Yeah, so okay. Debbie, you got a commitment on that one, because I think that's your territory, isn't it? As
It actually comes under Chief of Staff, so it's
Chief of
Emma's,
Staff,
but
right.
yeah, I can relay that to her. But we have changed over the last year or so. The contract standing orders, for instance, was one area that we had a look at because we needed to change, particularly with us coming out of the EU, for instance, and we tried to align for ease the things around how we did procurements for contracts, for instance. So where there's easy alignments, then we'll do them. But absolutely understand we are two sovereign councils.
Okie dokie. Yeah, if you could, as you say, tie up with Emma, yeah, and if we could just have a reference in a minute on that, please, that'd be great. Wonderful. So can we move, because we are really behind now. So
Thank you, Chair. I've got a query under MT4 on page 117. Is the review of our office accommodation really a priority project when both councils seem perfectly happy in their own homes? Thank you.
17. Sorry, it was MT what? Oh, 4. Right, okie doke. Who wants to respond? Debbie?
As you know, it's a piece of work that's been ongoing that the administration asked us to look at, which we're doing, and it's the completion of that piece of work that will come through to both councils in due course. And I think in terms of, is it a priority project? As members will know, the way we work now is very different to prior to COVID, and it is about maximising the efficiency of the space that we have, whether we stay as we are or whether we move, and make efficiencies that way. But I think running 2 offices is expensive, and we know that there is significant investment required at both offices over the next 20 years. So it's around looking at the options and bringing that forward in due course.
Okie dokie. And yeah, I mean, there's been the working parties, Debbie, which I've been on. We had the recommendations from the working party in SEAC going through to ONS ready for cabinet. That did get pulled. I personally believe, and this, Debbie, that the governance was wrong on that. It may well be that you gave advice on governance on this. I have got no idea, but all I do know is that the leaders at least agreed that the process would be changed, and therefore it was taken from ONS just before the meeting, going through the cabinet. I think it should have gone through the cabinet. Cabinet then make their decision what they want to do. I think that should be the correct governance on it. I'm not entirely agreeing with the governance that we've got in place around this and the way it's being handled at the moment. But I've made that statement, as you know, Debbie, outside of this room, and I think we're going to return to that at the next meeting. So
I think, Chair, just to say that it will come in due course through ONS. It was because SEAC and CTCF asked for some further information to come forward as part of that business case, that it was felt that it would be better to bring it when all that work had been done.
No, that's not the point I'm making. The point I'm making is that there was a process to go forward to recommendation from the working group, SEAC, ONS through to cabinet. That was the agreed process. It's that process I'm talking about. On the morning, 2 minutes before we're due to do an ONS view on that, scrutinise it, it was stopped, pulled from the cabinet, and then the process stopped. And what I believe is that the governance on that should have been allowed to continue through to cabinet, whether the recommendation is from ONS. Then cabinet makes its decision to not proceed with them recommendations. To go back, we set up another working group. So that's where we're having a disagreement here about that process. And I still think they should have proceeded on that basis. And the cabinet makes its decision. I just think that's my view. And I'll keep on making it. And as you know, we've got another working group to continue to finally bottom out, exactly where we are with the working group. Because the working group's discussing this point at the moment. So I'm just letting the Scrutiny Committee know, because Scrutiny never discussed the matter. Okie dokie. Anything else, and then we must move on. Okie dokie. So, can we agree with the recommendation as is with the
Subject to the
subject amendment, which Phil's going to also, as part of his kingdom, refer to car parks as well. Okie dokie. All those in favour? That's,
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's unanimous. Chair.
thanks very much. Right, next item. Agenda item 15, Greater Norwich Joint 5-Year Infrastructure Investment Plan and Annual Growth Programme, page 156. Paul, okie dokie. Right, Helen, fire away. Welcome, by the way.
Hey. Thank you, Chair. So I'm here for item 15, and it's obviously got lots of acronyms in this report, which hopefully we have detailed all of those out. So I'm just going to start by saying it's the Greater Norwich Joint 5-Year Infrastructure Investment Plan and the Annual Growth Programme. So it's not, shouldn't be unexpected for you. We come every year with this Annual Growth Programme for you. Agreed, the purpose is to approve the allocation of the Community Infrastructure Levy, CIL, to projects to be included within the next year's Annual Growth Programme. And in this case, it's also to agree the draft loan agreement for the drawdown of the 6.733 million to support the delivery of the Long Stratton bypass, which was always planned to come out of the CIL pot. So the 5-year plan includes progress on previously approved projects, updated forecasts on the Community Infrastructure Levy, information on the future project priorities, and also sets out the loan agreement drawdown on that loan for the Long Stratton bypass. In this year's Annual Growth Programme, there are 7 projects, 3 of which are within the district of Broadland, that being the Yellow Pedalway extension from the airport to Broadland Northway, Broadland Country Park, proposal for a crossing, and for some money to be spent at Yare Boat Club. I won't go into detail of all those projects. They are detailed in your report at table 1 on page 159. The county education as part of the drawdown will also be receiving 2 million. And obviously, as detailed in paragraphs 3.8 on page 159 is the loan agreement through the Public Loan Works Board of that drawdown for the Long Stratton bypass. I think it's just to note at paragraph 4.3, it's been through Place Shaping Policy Development Panel, who agree the proposals could be recommended onto Cabinet. So I'll go straight to the recommendation on page 163. Unless you want me to read it out, Chairman, it's at paragraphs 8.1 onwards.
Okie dokie. Any points of clarification on this or other? Eleanor?
Yeah, I just need to say I question the car-based transport scheme in this plan. That's the delivery of the Long Stratton bypass, because for various reasons, but on the 17th of January this year, a climate change risk assessment came out to say the UK wasn't doing enough to address climate change. And the Greater Norwich Local Plan topic paper, which was published in January on addressing climate change issues, makes it clear that car use needs to be reduced and alternative transport needs to be promoted. So I'm afraid I can't agree with this plan.
Could I also say, Helen, Phil, you're representative at the county working group on this, which, as you know, I'm a member of as well. So strategically, I think it may be a fair point for you to try to cover this, the point that Helen has raised.
Yeah, very, very happy to just cover it. I mean, it's been a long-term ambition, strategic ambition for the county. I think it was first asked for about 100 years ago, genuinely, recognising that there is a broader strategy across Greater Norwich, which does include significant investment in alternative means of transport and public transport across the Greater Norwich area, with a concentration in Norwich City itself. However, for anyone that travels through Long Stratton on a regular basis, there is a need for a bypass. Those works themselves do also include significant improvements in the village itself for cycling and walking. But there is still a strategic priority to bypass that village as it stands at this point in time.
Phil, is that I'm aware of, just in terms of information, the environmental impact assessments that have been carried out and are being carried out, they're still in progress at the moment, I believe.
In terms of the impact, then that's still part of the planning application. That's still going through the process, and will be going to the South Norfolk Planning Committee in spring. So that is tied up in terms of that wider impact. Just for the avoidance of any doubt, for anyone that's wondering why are we considering Long Stratton Bypass within Broadland District Council, that is because it is a Greater Norwich project, and we are part of that Greater Norwich partnership, and therefore funding of this sort of thing is a partnership thing. In the same way as South Norfolk effectively were signed up to the delivery of the Broadland Northway.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else? No. Okay. So recommendations. So we've got A, B, C, and D. Do you want me to read them out? Were you happy? Yeah. Okay. So I'll move those. All those in favour?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Against?
And 1 against.
Oh, no. You still have an input. Next item. Item 16, adoption of Norfolk Green infrastructure and recreational avoidance and mitigation. Again, it's you, Helen. Far away, please.
Thank you, Chair. There again, this one's got a long title, which I'm going to abbreviate as per the report to GIRAMS. And the purpose of this is to ensure that the council continues to meet its legal duty. And it's really important that we do have a legal duty to address this under the Conservation of Habitats and Species Regulations 2017. It's a collection of related obligations from residential development and other relevant development in accordance with the GIRAM's evidence and policy 3 of the Greater Norwich Local Plan. The strategy forms very much the evidence being put forward to the Greater Norwich Local Plan in respect of that policy 3, and members will be aware probably that this actually commenced today. So this is really important that the council does actually sign up to this. The strategy has been put together by all Norfolk authorities. It's been worked through the Norfolk Strategic Planning Framework, which obviously we as Broadland District Council have part of the decision making of that. And as I've already said, it forms part of the Greater Norwich local plan. So the payment is towards the cost of mitigation within the GIRAM strategy. You have got the whole GIRAM strategy attached to this report. It's provision enhancement of adequate green infrastructure either on the development or nearby to provide for informal recreational needs for residents. There's two parts. There's the green infrastructure, and then there's the recreational avoidance and mitigation element of that, known as RAMS. So there's the GI and the RAMS, thus the title. A review will be carried out in parallel with the adoption of this strategy, and will be carried out to ensure mitigation package is delivered and as effective as possible, because obviously it's the first time we've done this Norfolk-wide. So in recognition of the importance of some nationally significant areas, including the Brecks, the Broads, and the outstanding natural beauty coastline that we have in Norfolk, is why we actually need to have some mitigating measures put together to ensure each development within Norfolk actually contributes to those measures. So in table 10 of the document, which is page 341 of your papers, actually outlines some of those mitigations that will be carried out. And there's a total of estimate at the moment of 7.9 million, just over, which means for every new housing proposal secured through planning permission, we'll have to contribute £185.63 towards that. And we'll be collecting that Norfolk-wide, all local planning authorities, either it's more likely to be a Section 106 agreement, other legal agreement to actually secure that payment. We're looking to do that as from the 31st of March, subject to it going through all the due committees. And it's the other element is part of that Greater Norwich local plan evidence. We have actually agreed a statement of common ground with Natural England on the way forward of green this policy. So it's really important that we now endorse this report. So I'll lead you to recommendation on page 224 at paragraph 8, Chair.
Thank you. And I think the way you just summarised, connect that up and got to that relevant page as well was really helpful, actually. Dave?
Hi there. Thank you very much. Is this retrospective to existing planning applications or only new ones?
It will be new ones, but it's likely to be reserved matters as well. So any new permissions granted as from the 31st of March will have to pay this amount.
Thank you very much.
Okie dokie. Anyone else? No. Yeah, the mitigation is really, really important. I'm supposed to be at the Greater Norwich Local Plan speaking today, but this took priority, so unfortunately I couldn't make it. But I think I'm in again in 2 weeks' time, so that's on the Alsham development film. But on this one, I have read this actually, and how this fits in with the Greater Norwich Local Plan. It's absolutely vital in terms of mitigation and that charge. So completely support this. All those in favour?
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. Easy one for you there, right, Helen? You should have seen the others.
I've been listening.
Next item. Agenda item 18, exclusion of the press and public, which I'll move. I move that the press and public be excluded from the meeting for the remaining items of business because otherwise information which is exempt information by virtue of paragraph 3 of part 1 of schedule 12A of the Local Government Act. Sorry?
That's at the beginning of the.
Yeah, I can't do that because I need to just do the exempt first. So just let me do the exempt first because the public watching. Sorry, Caroline. I'll have to start that again now. Right. I move that the press and public be excluded from the meeting for the remaining items of business because otherwise information which is exempt information of virtue of paragraph 3 of part 1 of the schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972 as amended by the Local Government Access to Information Variation Order 2006 would be disclosed to them. So move, agreed,